I think this anti-Trump feeling in Colorado is not going to go away. And I know the Trump people hate hearing that. I love it when they say, well, if we had more Republicans who would run like Trump, they'd win in Colorado. Trump lost by 14 points to Biden. He lost by 11 to Kamala Harris. A Trump candidate cannot, as you said, cannot win in the suburban areas of Denver, which really dictate elections here.
2 years from now.
Yeah.
How badly will Republicans get spanked?
In 2026?
Yeah.
I'm afraid it's not going to be pretty, John.
Let's talk with Dick Wadhams about all things on this last election. But first, subscribe and like our channel. Click on that little bell icon for notifications and find the Devil's Advocate podcast on your favorite listening platform. So, Dick, did you get drunk on election night?
Well, one thing for sure, John, it was a much earlier night than I thought.
Yeah, everyone thought it would be a late night.
Yeah, in fact, I thought we'd be still figuring out who won the next morning.
Well, I tell you what, let's jump into the thing that every rhino hunter wants to ask you, which is, you did not vote for Trump.
I didn't,
and he won. So, in your face, what did you get wrong? Why wouldn't you do it the right way? Do you regret not voting for the big man? When you get sent to the re-education camp, don't come crying to me.
No, I don't regret my vote at all, and I wasn't surprised he won. I think it was pretty clear as we got closer to the election that I think the public looked at Kamala Harris, and the more they saw her, they didn't like her, and frankly, he focused on the right issues: immigration and inflation. And I think the voters said to themselves, "We really don't like Trump." But we're more concerned about our future in terms of immigration and inflation, and they voted accordingly.
I think somebody put it as the top three: inflation, immigration, and trans issues. That whole boys in girls sports. People have just had enough of the absurdity of it all. And there was definitely a feeling, this guy is with me on these issues.
I agree, John. The trans issue, I think, was the sleeper issue of the campaign. And frankly, one of the best radio ads of the campaign here in Colorado was Lauren Boebert, where she had a young high school student from her district who said, "I'm voting for Lauren Boebert because she doesn't want boys playing girls' sports," essentially. It's very well done, very compelling. And I thought, I think that's an issue that people are fed up with.
What I find fascinating is the change in the parties. When you and I were young, the Democratic Party was the party of labor. Guys who turned wrenches or steering wheels for a living, they were Democrats. The big cutoff on this election was not really gender or race even. It was college education.
Yes.
If you were college educated, you didn't vote for Trump. If you weren't college educated, you did. And I also found it fascinating that all the states that Kamala got were high-income states, including Colorado and California. So, people who don't feel the inflation nearly as much as working guys. I think those two things were just telling about how these parties have changed.
No doubt about it. And here in Colorado, you mentioned here, Pueblo, of course, passed for Trump. They voted for Trump.
Which they did in 2016,
they did,
not in 2020.
Not in 2020. But that's a very blue-collar, ethnic town going back generations and from the steel mills. And so that's kind of our little microcosm of what goes on in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. But otherwise, John, the state remained very, very Democratic, very blue, because of our higher educated electorate in those counties. And we still have a problem in Colorado where suburbanites are voting Democratic and they're moving away from us. I don't think that needs to be permanent, but right now it is.
Let me throw this one by you. Bud Light. The reason the Bud Light boycott was so successful, they lost 20% of their market share. They never really got it back. And you think about what Bud Light did, they just gave some beer to a trans guy. It's like, well, there's a little market there. Let's see. It wasn't a big sin at all.
No.
But the repercussion was outsized. I mean, it destroyed them. And you think about it, it's like, well, wait a second. You can't talk about this issue at work. You'll get fired. You go to HR. You can't do it in school. You'll lose your class. You could get kicked out of school. You're told to behave. You have to shut up and say things you don't want to say. But then Bud Light came along, and you could vote anonymously by grabbing some Coors or Modelo instead of Bud Light. This election, I think, was exactly the same. Again, pollsters didn't get it right, but this was an anonymous middle finger to the politically correct elite telling us how we're supposed to talk, what words we're supposed to use. This was a vote against the pronoun police and the people who screwed up our economy.
I agree, and I understand why voters did that. I still think there's an underlying problem that voters have with Trump's personality and the way he treats people, the way he conducts himself just overall. But I think in this election, they said to themselves, we're tired of inflation, we're tired of immigration, runaway immigration, and we're tired of the thought police, and so we're gonna vote for him. He's got an opportunity now, John. He really does, and I wish him the well, and I hope he does well.
Oh, he's a big rhino. Who'd you vote for?
I did not vote for Trump. I did not vote for her. I left it blank.
Really?
And that was my silent protest for January 6th and for this stupid, ridiculous contention the election was stolen in 2020. I have no tolerance for that. And my intolerance is growing daily about anybody who says the 2020 election was stolen, especially here in Colorado.
So. Let me ask you this one. Maybe this is hope, but I get a sense that 4 years in office, 4 years out of office, that Trump, the president, is a wiser president, understands how to do this a little better.
Yeah.
You know, some of his picks, including Chris Wright, Colorado's own guy for energy, a terrific choice.
Yes.
You know, and then he pulls Matt Gaetz. Yes. But my sense is he could be more focused this time around.
Well, I think he would, but I would even go back to the first term, John. I mean, my disagreement with Trump has never been on policy. I loved his tax cuts. I loved his judicial appointments. I loved his deregulation agenda. I loved what he did in the Middle East with the Abraham Accords. I loved what he did on immigration. I mean, we could go on. That was not the problem with the Trump presidency. What the problem is him deciding that Mike Pence should be hanged because he wouldn't skew the results of the Electoral College, that he continues to claim that he lost all those states because of voter fraud. So he does have an opportunity. Marco Rubio for state was a great choice, I think. I mean, you mentioned Chris Wright. I really stood up and applauded when I heard that over the weekend. I think we all did. But Matt Gaetz, I mean, really? I think Governor Burgum of North Dakota was a great choice. So I think overall he's doing pretty well. But this Matt Gaetz thing totally throws me. I don't get it.
You worked for Senator Thune when he was Congressman Thune. He is now Senate Majority Leader Thune.
Yes.
I want to get some insight on this. His victory over Daschle, which is the campaign you ran, that was an underdog thing from the beginning, and that was just a crazy election. And what you did there, now you've got a straight line to the majority leader.
Well, John, what was interesting about that race is that he had run for the Senate 2 years earlier against the other senator from South Dakota, Tim Johnson. And he was a very popular congressman at the time. Everybody thought that Thune was going to beat Senator Johnson in that 2002 election. But the Daschle political team, which were very talented and very ruthless, they ran the Johnson campaign and they beat Thune by 564 votes. And so, and then there were allegations of voter fraud on the reservations, and a bunch of people in Washington wanted Thune to challenge the election results, and he said, "No, I'm not going to put my state through it." Number one, number two, the results, those allegations are totally unfounded. But when he got ready to run for the Daschle seat, which he initially wasn't interested in, I had just come off the Allard campaign in '02, and you remember that was a brutal campaign between Allard and Strickland, that second one. And he contacted me.
The first one wasn't a picnic.
Well,
either.
no, it wasn't. No, and when we first met, I said, well, John, because he's a former congressman by now. So, John, surely you have your political team from a year ago. Why are you talking to me? And he said, and this is what he literally said to me. And he said, well, the Daschle campaign, the Daschle political team is they're ruthless. I mean, and he said, I need somebody who a lot tougher to run my campaign and who can stand up to these guys. And they had watched what we had done in the Allard campaign. And so, but what impressed me, John, was the fact that this guy had lost a race he should have won 2 years earlier. And he was ready to take on Tom Daschle, which was, I mean, nobody thought Daschle was vulnerable. But as we got into the campaign, I went ahead and joined up. It was clear Daschle had kind of lost touch with his state, that he was much more liberal than the state, and that if we could convince the voters of South Dakota that he says one thing in Washington or one thing in South Dakota and votes a different way in Washington, that we had a shot. And Thune is a really good guy, and he's smart. He's got that South Dakota charm and about him. But what I found underneath, he is a tough guy, and he's very competitive. He played basketball. He was a notorious basketball star. He didn't play in college, but he's a competitor, and he showed that in that campaign, and we were able to eke it out.
So talk to me about him running the Senate. First, I know everyone loves to rip on Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell saved the judicial branch of government. I think here's my analogy. Norma Anderson in Colorado knew she was a state senator, not what you call a hardcore Republican, not what I would like, but man, this woman knew the ins and outs of the process.
Yes.
She knew how to hold up a bill. She knew how to do this. She knew how to change that. She knew the process. Mitch McConnell does the same thing, which is why we have the court we have now in the Supreme Court. And I hope he's not missed this time around. Talk to me about Thune. Is he the right guy to be a leader? Well,
McConnell was number 2 for the last several years, and before that, he was the number 3. So John was in leadership with McConnell for I think the last 8 years. So he certainly learned at the feet of McConnell. He's a different personality. John is a very likable guy. If he came in here, you'd love him. McConnell is kind of a curmudgeon. I mean, he's not terribly likable. But John, I never understood why the MAGA people, the Trump people, hated McConnell so much. All he did when he was majority leader and minority leader is kept that Supreme Court seat open for a year and a half when Scalia died. He got through 235 judgeships that President Trump recommended. He got through the tax bill. He got through legislation necessary for immigration and for deregulation. And I've always wondered, what was it about McConnell that he did not do for President Trump, other than oppose Trump on January 6th and stolen elections? But in terms of the policies, Trump was a successful president on policy because of McConnell and the leadership team like Thune. So I've never figured that out. I just don't understand it.
All right, so I see a Republican House, even if it's just by a hair, Republican Senate, and hopefully a smarter, more experienced President Trump. So I just see all sorts of things going wrong because it's just lined up too good for us. What do you see?
I actually think that a lot of good things could happen with this new Trump administration. Once again, my problem with him was never on policy. I'm kind of intrigued by this Elon Musk situation to streamline government. Now, they're not going to accomplish what they're setting out to do. No. But I got to tell you, I think they could bring some very worthwhile scrutiny of the size, scope, and cost of the federal government, maybe like we've never seen before. I'm kind of excited by that.
Well, especially with Elon and Ramaswamy, the problem is, in order to implement those changes, elected officials will be voting against their own pork.
That's the problem.
And with the military-industrial complex, they really learned that one single plane is not made in a state. It is made in 50 states. There's a part in every place just to make sure they've got jobs spread out everywhere so they get it. I think the green industrial complex has learned the same trick, and they are even more powerful than the military. I just don't see. Let's bring it to Colorado. The Gabe Evans victory blew me away. I did not see that coming. I was made privy to some polling numbers that sure did not look good for Gabe. What turned that around?
I think Gabe was a better candidate, just period. I mean, you know, his background was a helicopter pilot in Afghanistan and then a police officer, young state representative. He's articulate. I don't think Yadira Caraveo really was a very good candidate when it came down to it. She had an impressive life story. I mean, she's a pediatrician. Her parents came to the United States from Mexico. I think she's a very admirable person. But I just don't think she ever really locked down that district. I think we know that now. And I thought that Gabe Evans ran a really good campaign. They stayed focused. They didn't let anything distract them, and that's so often the problem with campaigns, John. They get distracted by shiny objects that don't matter.
Or answering arrows and spears thrown at them by their opponents, and you fall for it because they say something, and a person that just goes, I never said that. I didn't. You got that all wrong. And it's really easy to get thrown off the script.
I loved when the Caraveo campaign attacked Gabe because of a letter he wrote when he was 17 years old on gay marriage. I'm just like, are you kidding me? 17 years old? And I think most fair-minded people looked at that and said, that's, 17 years old is not, that's not fair. You got to hand it to Gabe and his campaign. They ran a great campaign. He also had the benefit of enough money to be competitive. Didn't outspend her. Didn't need to. But I think that Gabe really was very impressive.
Two more factors.
Yeah.
First one is Trump. Trump performed better
in the eighth,
than he did last time around.
Yes, he did.
He still lost,
right?
But in so many states, he lost.
Trump was not a drag to him. You're right. Yeah.
And that was huge.
Yeah.
The other one is, and hats off to Dave Williams and the Libertarian Party. There was not a libertarian in that fight that really pulled that much from Republicans. Libertarians had this agreement that they wouldn't go into a close battle. There was a unity guy and a approval voting guy.
There were two other people on the ballot that still pulled off votes. I don't know if you can give Dave Williams any credit for that. I think that was that individual, because in other races, this big vaunted deal he made with the Libertarians didn't come through at all. But on that particular one,
but in this race,
but I think,
remember Kirkmeyer lost, and I think very convincingly because there was a Libertarian.
She did, but I do think Gabe, you got to give Gabe Evans credit for meeting with the Libertarian candidate and them talking about the issues, and he convinced the Libertarian they had more in common than they didn't, and that the Libertarian could feel good about getting out of the race. I think that was more Gabe Evans than Dave Williams, to be honest. So
interesting, but still a factor.
Still a factor. Right. I agree.
The legislature is no longer a supermajority.
No.
Boy, Republicans are running around like we did it, man. We did it. We're not in the super minority anymore. We're just in the huge minority, but not the super minority. How big of a deal is it?
Well, it is a big deal, because think about how miserable the past few elections have been. Since 2018, we have taken a bath on legislative races. We lost our majority in the state Senate, and we've been going downhill ever since. And we've been going in the steady decline even in the House. Well, now picked up 3 seats, went from 19 to 22, taking away the supermajority, and maintained that 12th seat in the Senate. So I think, given the disaster that Colorado has been for the last several election cycles, I think it's a big deal. Now, we can't constantly judge ourselves by that measure, but I think this is the first good news. And on top of it, John, winning the 8th, as you point out, and then having a great new congressman in the 3rd Congressional District, Jeff Hurd. Jeff Crank is going to be a star from the 5th District. I think there was a lot of good news out there for Republicans. Not because of the Colorado Republican Party, though. They did everything they could to destroy it.
The third and the fifth, these are safe seats.
Yes.
You know, so we've got new faces,
right?
And they're safe. The state party, was not involved in much of the campaigns. In fact, there was a hit piece saying, I forget which congressman is running, and it's the Arizona Republican Party that's sending out these mailers. Why was that?
The National Republican Congressional Committee, whose sole purpose in life is to elect Republicans to the House, they route money through state parties in states with competitive congressional campaigns. They did not trust the state Republican Party in Colorado to use that money for its intended purpose. And so they had to route it through a state party that was competent and would do the right thing. And so that was, I got to tell you, John, when I was state chairman, if the National Republican Congressional Committee and the Republican Senatorial Committee and the RNC had said, you know, Dick, we just don't think you're competent enough or honest enough to take our money to do the right things with it, we're going to route it through Wyoming, I tell you, I would have resigned in embarrassment. They did not trust Dave Williams and whatever they have at the state Republican Party. And you know why they didn't? Because last year, Kevin McCarthy, the former speaker, had a PAC set up to send money to states with competitive districts. He sent $250,000 to the Colorado Republican Party that was designed to help in the third when they thought Boebert would be running for re-election. You know how much of that $250,000 got spent on the 8th district or the 3rd district or the 4th district? Not one dime. Not one dime. Kevin McCarthy sent the state $250,000 and nothing went to those candidates. And so the National Republican Congressional Committee said, why would we send a dime to Dave Williams and the state party in Colorado when he probably will just pocket it or just not or certainly not use it for what it's intended for. That's why they had to go to the Arizona party. And it was a little bit embarrassing for Jeff Hurd, but not so much he lost. But I would rather have the mail and the money spent correctly than to send it through that clown Dave Williams, who wouldn't even have used it in the districts.
How do you really feel?
Well, I got to tell you, John, the other thing, that is just irresponsible. It's unethical. It's just wrong the way that he was sent that money. And that's why the NRCC said, no, we are not going to send one dime to Colorado. We're going to spend it otherwise. This
dovetails into something you worked on during this campaign season. You worked giving some consulting to Ken Theory and Prop 131, which would have brought a jungle primary and ranked choice voting.
Right.
Two things surprised me in this election. Gabe Evans and how much this went down.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it would be close. This wasn't that close.
55-45.
Yeah, 10 points down from what you needed to win.
You're right. You're right.
You needed 55%.
Yeah. No. It was a statute.
Oh, that's right. It was only 50.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm sorry. Let's stay with the Republican Party. Now that the primaries haven't changed,
right?
What happens to Republican primaries? Is there a chance they could become closed primaries? And what does that actually mean?
How about not existent? Dave Williams and his crowd tried to cancel the 2024 Republican primary, which they can do under our election law if they get 75% of the state central committee, which is about 400 party leaders. They got 65%. They tried to go to court and to knock down the 75% requirement. They lost that court case. There is no doubt that they will try again in 2025 to get the 75% to cancel the 2026 Republican primary election.
Let me repeat this back. I want to see if I've got this.
Yes.
The Central Committee of the Republican Party, same thing with the Democrat Party, are the heads of all the counties, Republican parties.
And they get together officials, yeah.
And that makes up how many people? About 400?
About 400 people.
About 400 people. By their bylaws, I think it's the bylaws, in order to...
state election law, too.
Oh, really?
Oh, no, it was part of 108 and 107 that gave unaffiliated the ability to vote in primaries. Right. Part of that deal was there was the provision in that That is, the 75% of the Central Committee could literally cancel the primary and nominate solely by caucus assembly process. Right. Yes.
And for those who don't know it, you go to the caucuses on that one weird Tuesday, and then you get elected to one of the assemblies, and then the assembly decides who to put on the primary
ballot. Yeah. No, on the general election ballot.
On the primary ballot.
Primary ballot.
But so you're saying that if they can get 75% of the Central Committee to say, we don't want a primary, whoever wins in the assembly
that's exactly right.
is the nominee.
For everything from county commissioner up to U.S. senator and governor. And let's think about that, John. 950,000 Republicans would not get a primary election ballot. They would have to go through the caucuses, to have any impact on the primary, on the nomination.
I have a hard time seeing that they'd reach 75%, given that you had enough to vote Williams out of office in a meeting that a court said didn't count.
I don't know. They got 65 last time, and that was the same committee. And I think given the fact that the people who went to the state convention in 2024 will probably make up the bulk of the state central committee, I think there's every possibility he might get 75. But even more importantly, John, 1.8 million unaffiliated voters will only get the Democratic ballot in the mail. Now think about that. You and I pay attention to politics. A lot of people don't.
We pay too much attention.
Probably so. But think about a few 100,000 unaffiliated voters who want to vote in the Republican primary, and they get that Democratic ballot in the mail, and they say to themselves, well, I want to vote in the Republican primary. So they call their county clerk. You didn't send me a Republican ballot. And that clerk says, there is no Republican ballot. Well, why not? Because the Republican Party said they didn't want you to vote in their primary, and they canceled it.
Even if you are a Republican.
Even if you want to vote Republican. I got to tell you, John, you talk about rank stupidity on the part of political party, and yet Dave Williams and that crowd that runs the party right now, they are intent on trying to do this again. They are.
Speaking of ranked choice voting lost. Why?
I think what happened, John, is that a lot of people who I think fundamentally believe the political process is broken, but they got the blue book in the mail. They started reading the media attention on it, and I think ranked choice voting ended up being a bridge too far. That the open primary they loved, but they couldn't get their mind around.
What makes you say that? I mean, I've become warm to the idea of the open primary. Right. I still don't like ranked choice voting.
I understand. Yeah.
But what makes you think that Colorado voters like the open primary, or what we call jungle primary? What do you base that on?
What I think I said is that they don't like the political process.
Right.
Well, look at how they're affiliating. We've gone from a third that existed for a decade.
Republican, a third Democrat, third unaffiliated.
We are now at 49% unaffiliated, and it's going to blow by 50 very quickly. People are voting with their feet. They're saying, we don't want to be part of either one of those two parties. We see socialists over here, and we see these stolen election conspiracists over here, and we don't like either one of them. And I think that's going to continue. And I think this is truly becoming in many ways, a nonpartisan state. And you've written very eloquently about that, and I agree with you. And I think that's where we're headed. And I think that even though it lost by 10 points, 55-45, I look at it and I say 45% of the electorate is with us, and it's not going to take me long before we get the whole thing.
I've said this for years, that Colorado has the possibility of becoming the first unaffiliated state or independent voter state that we're going to see other people run.
Yeah.
Leading to this. 4 years of Trump is not going to sit well with Colorado unaffiliated.
No.
It's not going to, the suburban areas are not going to.
No.
It's going to be bad for Republicans.
Yeah.
In 2 years and in 4 years, maybe 2 years after that, even when he's out of office.
Right.
We have to find unaffiliated candidates in these suburban districts.
Yeah, I agree.
That can win, because it's already election season again.
Yeah.
I think about the governor's race.
Yeah.
And right now, I put my money on Phil Weiser, maybe Joe Neguse, because I hear he's thinking about it as well.
That's what I hear.
So Is there a Republican who wants it?
Well, I think, listen, I think about Paul Lundeen, the Senate Minority Leader, who I'm a huge fan of. And I think he's a great senator and a great leader in our legislature. I think about Cory Gardner, who is a great senator, never would have left the Senate had it not been for the anti-Trump feeling in Colorado. I think we've got some potentially good Republican candidates. But John, you said it. I don't think I think this anti-Trump feeling in Colorado is not going to go away. And I know the Trump people hate hearing that, I love it when they say, well, if we had more Republicans who would run like Trump, they'd win in Colorado. Trump lost by 14 points to Biden. He lost by 11 to Kamala Harris. A Trump candidate cannot, as you said, cannot win in the suburban areas of Denver, which really dictate elections here. So I think we might come to grips with this maybe in 2026.
Let me go through.
So, yeah.
The old saying here was, because we're old enough to remember this, Mr. Wadhams, that as goes Jefferson County, so goes the state. Mm-hmm. As goes Arapahoe County. Well, those are now hardcore
60-40 Democratic.
60-40 Democratic
Yes.
places. And now Douglas County.
Yes.
Lauren Boebert won by 1 percentage point
Yes.
in Douglas County.
Yes. Yes.
So Douglas County is going the way of Arapahoe, which went the way of Jefferson County.
Right. That's right.
So I don't see that changing unless there's some sort of national change. If there's economic hardship, if there's war, who knows what could happen. Things change.
And John, I was heartened by the utter defeat, devastating defeat of Proposition HH. 20 points. Right. That told me that a lot of these unaffiliated voters who don't like Republicans, if we can get them focused on the merits of an issue, can be with us, which goes to your point. If we can remove the Republican and Trump factors, we might have a shot.
I'll add one more to that. Maybe this is a hope more than an observation.
Okay.
The abortion boogeyman can't scare us that much longer.
No.
Colorado now has the most outrageous and liberal constitutional protections right up to the moment of birth for abortion. And as long as people understand that, there's nothing really there.
I mean, what else can they do? Require an abortion clinic on every corner?
Right.
I mean, honestly, I don't know what can they put on the ballot now that they've got this constitutional amendment?
If you've raised teenagers, I'm thinking about taking the time for abortion all the way to 13 years.
Well,
but
there you go.
And therefore, as people slowly understand that this is a state-based issue, as they understand Congress is not going to touch this issue, it's just not going to be.
No.
If that dies down,
yes,
I think there's a chance that people start voting about dollars and cents. And I also think Colorado is going to be in a world of hurt after 10, 15 years of progressive policies compared to other states in the country.
You know, and by the way, I need to applaud Trump. I think he was very skillful in maneuvering around the abortion issue by saying, I will not support a national abortion ban. And I thought Trump handled the issue very well in that national campaign. I thought, once again, Gabe Evans did too in the 8th District. But no, you're right. I mean, the Democrats cannot use that club anymore. There is no more threat. There never was a threat in Colorado. But now
Give any credit to Melania for coming out with the pro-choice?
She wrote that book, and she made it very clear she disagreed with her husband on that issue. And I have a feeling, think about the powerful lobbying presence she had with him. So I wouldn't be surprised.
I want to finish up on ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
You were there. You were in the inner circle. Mm-hmm. Does it come back?
Yes. I don't know in what form or how soon.
Even though ranked choice voting got spanked all over the nation, from Alaska to other states where they even put in a ban against it, a preemptive ban.
Let me remind you something, John. It took 3 times for Tabor to pass. And if you look at, in fact, I went back and looked. In 1988, when it was on the ballot the first time, it got beat badly. I mean, it really badly. In 1990, it ran very respectably. 92, it passes. So 3 election cycles it took to pass Tabor, and now Tabor is like almost sacrosanct in the Constitution. I know they are trying to whittle away at it, but I honestly think the frustration with our political process is going to continue to get greater. And the more people take a look at what the alternatives are, I think they'll come this direction. I do.
And will it be ranked choice voting, or do you think it'll be something
It'll
else?
some-
Will they break it? Will they break it into two?
It'll be something. I can't answer that question, but the process will not remain the same. It will not remain the same.
So what we're seeing in the future, unaffiliated candidates and some major change to election law.
I do believe that. I do believe that, yes.
Who's going to be the governor? Come on, put your money down now. We'll replay this in 2 years.
Well, I think this woman by the name of Jenna Griswold used to be kind of one of the front runners. Not sure she is anymore. But there will be, I hear that Jason Crow wants to be governor. I hear that Neguse might want to leave the House. I think that if Griswold ends up not running for governor because of this, her horrible incompetence, I think there will be some other female Democrat or Democrats that will get in. I think the Democrats are going to have a wild process for governor. I think John Hickenlooper is going to have a problem, John. I think a lot of Democrats are going to wonder, listen, he's 70, 4, 5, 6 years old. Why does he need another term in the Senate? Why doesn't he step aside for a new generation of Democrats? And then there will be some left-wing Democrats who will challenge him. I think,
really, all right, let's dive into this.
Yeah.
Are you saying you think John Hickenlooper will be challenged from within his own party?
Yes. He won't lose. He'll win the primary. But I think between the Democratic Socialists and just younger Democrats who just want a generational change, they're going to challenge him. I could see that.
You think he changes his mind?
If it appeared serious, yes. But I'm not sure how serious it'll be because
I think he likes life.
This whole notion, I would be a horrible senator, I would hate it back there. You betcha. He likes it. He likes it. But he's going to have some uncomfortable moments, I think. I really do.
Who could unseat him?
Probably no one, to be honest. But on the other hand, I could see a kind of a dynamic challenger putting together the kind of campaign that could scare him. But he's going to have all the money in the world. He's an incumbent senator. They raise money by putting out a bucket and the people walk by and put checks in it. I mean, that's how they raise money. So he's going to have all the money. But I think there will be some unrest in the Democratic Party with him.
Go from the state back to the feds 2 years from now.
Yeah.
How badly will Republicans get spanked?
In 2026?
Yeah.
I'm afraid it's not going to be pretty, John, because we all know, well, midterms, you and I both know, midterm elections are devastating for the incumbent president, whoever it is. I mean, Obama had a problem. George W. Bush had a problem.
Clinton had the problem.
Clinton had the problem.
He lost the House for the first time in nearly 50 years.
And we've seen it right here in Colorado. I mean, Obama had two bad elections here in Colorado in 2010 and 2014.
Obama had two bad elections. He won.
I'm sorry, in Colorado, Democrats had a problem because of his, because Corey, remember, that's when Corey unseated Udall. In 2010, we except for Dan Mays, we would have done very well in 2010. But so, frankly, I'm not very optimistic about 2026 with those state races in Colorado for Republicans because Trump will be unpopular, even more so than he is right now. That's just the nature of it. And unless something dramatically changes, I don't think we're going to be very competitive in 2026. I wish I could say otherwise.
The reforms under Reagan were much better in the first 4 years than the second 4 years. I might even say here in Colorado, the reforms that Bill Owens did as governor in the first 4 years were amazing. Yeah. And the second term didn't live up to that for a lot of different reasons, including change in the legislature. Yeah. Same thing with Trump. This is kind of the second term, but because there's 4 years in between, are we going to have as much transformational change as we did the first time?
I actually think I'm really relatively optimistic about the policy sides of this new administration. First of all, I do agree with those who say he knows better what he's doing now. I mean, think about it. He goes from New York City to the White House and really has no understanding of the federal government or the Congress or anything. Well, that's different now. And so I actually think he will be a better president policy-wise in the beginning of this term than he was last time, even though he did do a lot of good things that I continue to give him credit for. But And it is different. We haven't had this situation since Grover Cleveland in 1882 or whatever, where a president wins, loses, wins again. So it's just different now. But no, I think he has a real opportunity.
Would you agree with me on this one?
Yeah.
Donald Trump is the greatest political comeback story in American history.
Yes. I would rank number 2, relatively close, would be Richard Nixon. How he lost that 60 presidential campaign to Kennedy, then lost for governor of California in 62. He disappears and comes back and wins 2 terms in the presidency. Then Watergate
Richard Nixon,
happens.
who was never impeached, never convicted of a crime, never.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, you mentioned about the first term, how so many governors and senators or presidents are so effective. I've always wondered if Virginia had it right. You know, they have 1 term.
Yep.
And they confer great power to the governor.
Just repeat this for folks who might not know.
Yeah.
Virginia, I think, might be the only state or Commonwealth,
the only one left now,
that there was term limits forever since the beginning. You have a 4-year term as governor. You can run again, but not consecutively.
You have to sit out the term and then come back, and that's been done, I think, once. There was a Republican, by the way. But I've always wondered, maybe that's the best way to go, because second terms, John, governors and presidents seem to lose interest. I mean, look at Dick Lamb and Roy Romer. They were
3 terms each.
They were very popular, but they kind of drifted. You know, those later terms. Bill Owens had a spectacular first term, and then he kind of struggled the second term. And I think he would acknowledge that there were some problems in that second term. But,
I would say the same thing about Hickenlooper, but I don't think he knew he was in office for either term. But that's something else.
Yeah. I agree.
All right, what am I missing here? Was there a theme for the night? We'll wrap it up on that.
Actually, like I said, I think Republicans should be optimistic about what happened.
Colorado Republicans?
Yeah, given what we've gone through the previous 3 election cycles, to actually pick up seats in the House, hold the Senate, and then elect 3, I think, great new congressmen. I really do. I mean, I think the 2 Jeffs and Gabe, they're going to be stars.
I think you're like the guy who's been hitting himself in the face with a log, and then it feels so good when you stop. You know, so nothing's changed in the Senate. We didn't hold anything. We just hold the numbers. We've got
12.
3 more seats in the House, but we're still in a ridiculously over.
Right.
What are the numbers in the House now? I forget.
It's now 22 to 43. 43-22. Yeah.
43-22.
It was 46-19.
Yeah. So man, we were feeling good. We're coming back, man. And in 3 Republican districts, we had new Republicans win because the old ones didn't run.
Well, in the 8th, that was one we should not have won. I mean, no, that was a very big challenge. That was the big story election night. Gabe Evans, and he was a great candidate, and he had a great campaign behind him.
I've heard people say that Colorado will be the home of the resistance. That since we still have a very progressive state legislature, this is how we're going to keep Trump in place. I love it when Democrats find the 10th Amendment.
Yes.
And we're going to use our state's rights to stand up to Trump.
Yeah. It is interesting, John, to think about the fight that will occur over keeping the Space Command in Colorado Springs. And I mean, I know our congressional delegation will fight hard for that, but you know, Trump can move that thing. And that's just the brutal truth of it. So
that would be a terrible move.
It would be a terrible move. But
Dick, thanks so much.
Thank you, John.
We'll do it again soon.
Always fun.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.